is a skeptic loser who looks like a deflated Namami until he moves in with 3 temple sisters and has to choose which to pipe. It all starts when he arrives at the shrine. The tourists think he might be praying to the gods to pass his exams, but Oryu doesn't believe in all that stuff. He rather hang out with Tom Cruise and the rest of the science huggers. He then heads up to the temple to introduce himself, but no one seems to be around. Oryu decides to look around. When he hears the sound of girls changing in the next room, he narrowly escapes the usual walk into plot steam, but the door suddenly flies open and 3 plot goddesses appear for a second. Oh my, the door closes again and Oro hopes he can pretend he didn't just experience a second solar system, but the girls return to give him help for peeping. The girls turn out to be shrine maidens, and Oryu later explains that he's supposed to be moving in with them. The Sooner sister refuses to accept that some creeping Tom would be staying with them, so Oryu asks for the priest to prove it. Unfortunately, their granddad won't be back till the next day. The girls then introduce themselves. Via's the youngest sister, who secretly wants her Var Swift aggressively. Ya, the older sister, who sounds like she's permanently on acid, and Ya, who's got a successful future as a Karen. Oryu is thankful they're all weirdos, so he doesn't have to pretend to play nice with them. His only interest is in the pages of his book. At this, Yu now grudgingly warns him to be on his best behavior if he hopes to get dinner later. Ya shows Ori to his room, claiming to have cleaned up for his sake. However, when she opens the door to the overstuffed closet, Oryu rushes to save her from being pummeled by garbage. Yu now runs in to check on them and finds Oryu getting buried under Ya's golden globes, causing her to unleash the beast. Later, Oryu returns to studying when AI appears and suggests they get to know each other better. When Oryu refuses her company, Adi worries that his trouser equipment doesn't work right. She then decides to come through his luggage for proof that he can get it up at night. Oryu tries to stop her but slips on some shorts and lands right on her when Yuna comes in to check on them. She finds Oru's bowl too close to O's nut and turns into Godzilla. Later, Oryu still struggles to study, so he decides to take a potty break. When he sees the light on in one of the rooms, he goes to check who's still up and finds Yus spread out on the floor. To stop her from catching a cold, he grabs a kotha blanket for her. Ya wakes up the wrong time and thinks he's up to no good. She freaks out, causing the other sisters to walk in on them playing body twisters. They shut the door for their own sanity, but Oryu tries to explain that he prefers his hand over girls, what prompting Yu at scatter salt on his evil. Afterward, they all sit together and Oryu asks what Ya was doing up so late. He notices the papers on the table, so the girls explain that they're on long-way charms. Ya insists that she had to do it alone, so that Oru's jizz-stained hands would never touch them, making Oryu ask why she would go that far if it doesn't make any money. At that, the girls begin to pull out the red strings from their hair, explaining that shrine maidens help to connect people who need help to the gods. They then make their prayers with the red string wrapped around their hands. Oru asks if the string is necessary, so they explain that the strings are something their mother left behind. Even though their mother is gone now, the string still helps them connect to her. Yunat asks Oru what he was doing up to. So he says he was studying as usual. When he says he's trying to get into a prestigious medical school, the girls are surprised that he didn't just want to wank himself to death. The girls tell him that some of the gods are said to grant success in passing exams, and they're in the season of miracles. Apparently there's a magical star shower happening soon, and legend says that if you let the stardust fall on you, your wish will come true. When Yu assures him that the gods will surely hear his prayer, Oryu calls it a load of bull, as Oryu explains that the impact of a meteor would turn Yu into a pancake. Yag goes pale from his blasphemy. To make it worse, Oryu insists they must have fairy tales for brains, so Vuno finally loses it and tries to perform a ritual to curse the Na fool. Thankfully, Ya manages to stop her. The next day, more and more visitors come to the shrine while Oryu broods by a tree, lamenting how none of that mambo jumbo works. Suddenly, he overhears Ya's atrocious attempt to speak English to a little girl who will go home to have nightmares now. Oryu steps in and fluently tells the girl to accept the talisman, so the girl gladly grabs it and waves them goodbye. Afterward, Oru offers to teach Yao some better English so she doesn't scare off the foreign tourists, but Yao refuses to take help from him. However, she thanks him for stepping in and promises to Study her English more. Suddenly a bird swoops down and steals her red string. Yuna remembers when her mom handed them those red strings, and they instantly became treasures. Now some overgrown mono has flown away with it. Later, Yua looks depressed cause she hasn't found it yet, so her sisters assure her that the gods will surely help them find it. Later, Oryu suddenly butts in and scolds them for leaving everything to the gods. He insists that no amount of prayer would actually make their wishes come true, and they had to get it there and do it themselves. Yua fires back and says the gods would never abandon anyone who prays to them for help. As she walks off angrily, she tells him he clearly doesn't belong here. Oryu returns to his room, thinking it's best to stay away from Ya. However, when the girls go check on him, they find he's no longer there. Immediately freaks out, and they end up wondering how they can make the two of them get along. Unfortunately, Asadi was too busy searching for any of Oryu's materials to listen to Ya's worries. Suddenly, Yaidu notices a picture of Oryu and his mom, and Adi reminds her of what their grandpa told them. Apparently, Oryu had lost his mom when he was young and ended up in an orphanage. They figure that he probably prayed to the gods back then, but got a divine middle finger in return. That's why he doesn't believe in the gods anymore. Aid then assures why that Yuya and Oryu are more alike than they think, while Ya eavesdrop on them. Meanwhile, Oryu searches all the birds' nests he can find for Ya's red string. After failing, he decides to try again in the morning, but then he remembers the girls praying and decides to try it out. At the same time, Ya searches everywhere for Oryu. When she finds him praying for her to find her treasure, Ya joins him and commends him on his prayer. So Oryu apologizes for being an earlier. Ya apologizes too. And when she sees his dirty hands, she tells him that since he has a little respect for the gods, he can live at the shrine. Just then, the girls show up relieved to find them, though Asadi is convinced they were secretly taboo humping. They head back to the house together and agreed that if a miracle happens, they'll be able to find the red string. At that moment, Oro is shocked to see the magical star shower occur, so they all stare at it. Surprised, however, Oryu realizes it's just a meteor shower and cherry blossoms falling at the exact same time. So much for miracles. The girls wonder how long the stick up his is and ask if the sight in front of him isn't as beautiful as a miracle. Oryu finally agrees, and while talking, Yuna's red strings gets removed from a bird's nest and falls on top of her. The next day, the priest Chidori finally arrives, so the girls tell him everything was fine. In his absence, Chidori then welcomes Oryu and explains that once he gets married, they'll take over the role of being priest. When Oryu asks what the hell is talking about, the gear tells him we'll get to wed and be one of his granddaughters. Boo immediately objects and says he only planned on being a freeloader. He adds that he wants to be a doctor, not a priest, but Chidori assures him that being a priest is flexible so he can work 2 jobs. The girls also object, but when Chidori ignores them, Yu insists that he won't go through with it. Chidori calmly informs him that he plans to transfer him to a school that would increase his chances of getting into his dream university. Upon hearing this, Ru begs him to forgive his insolence and asks how many grandkids he wants. Chidori laughs as he walks away, while Yu plans to find a way to escape any pesky wedding bells. Later, the girls hold an anti-Yu meeting led by Yuna, who thinks the old man must have dementia. The other girls agree that it would be weird to marry him out of the blue, and Yuna adds that Yu doesn't even believe in God. They wonder what they can do, so Yuna suggests they find a way to kick him out of the house. After the operation commences, and Yuna tells Yu he'll have to do housework instead of reloading. His first task is cooking, so Yuna shows him a fridge emptier than Yi's brain. She figures there's no way he can whip something up with those ingredients, but she stands corrected when he presents a Gordon Ram's special. The girls quickly stuff their faces, and even though the meal was impeccable, Yuna says he's not off the hook yet. Next up, he's forced to do the laundry. Yuna hopes he'd fold under the heat of the sun, while wonders if it's a good idea to give him access to their plot covers. Surprisingly, Hugh doesn't bat an IL at their unmentionables and ends up being more of a challenge for the girls to witness. After suffering this self-inflicted embarrassment, Hugh folds the laundry into neat piles that make them look like they were brand new. However, Yum insists that it's not over yet and is forced to whip out her secret weapon. Yu will have to clean Ya's room. His room is the spitting image of a pigsty, so Yuna wished him good luck on his mission. Yu wondered where to start from, as his nose was getting defiled by something rotten. He discovered the source was some oil painting, since Y was an art major. Yu almost lost his life in the process, but he presented a sparkling clean room in the end. Ya felt they should let him stay in the house after putting him through that, and Assad added that they could use a handy maid too when. You heard this. He thanked them for their short-lived hospitality, but if he had to do housework every day, he wouldn't be able to read for medical school. Because of this, Huru packs his bags and leaves to achieve his dreams. The girls felt weird about his exit, but Yuma insisted that their plan must have been a great success. However, Y and Asahi looked sad to see him go. Later on the train, Yu was back to studying hard while the girls were secretly stalking him. They tease Yuna for being a softie, though she denies even having a heart. They wonder why Yu was passionately aiming to be a doctor, and thought it was probably because of his mother. The stalking continued from the station all the way to a secluded area where the trail ended at a house haunted by crows and bad omens. Yo worried that Yuru was planning to live live in the slums because she kicked him out, but Yu snuck up on them and scared the salt out of Yuna. They wonder what's up with all the kids while the kids try to name the planets on their chests. Huru asked them what they were doing there when he got interrupted by the owner of the house and a Dr. Mayu. They head inside and Mahiro explains that she runs the orphanage called Miracle Garden. She thanks the girls for taking in a deadbeat like Yu and says they're too pretty to be his future wives. She assures them that Yu has some good qualities and teases him for aiming to be a doctor. Because of her, Hugh stops her before she mentions what he does at night. Then he insists he's not returning to the shrine or marrying them. Mahu quickly grabs his mouth and threatens him, reminding him of the string she pulled to get him a foster home. After the kids run up to Yu to show them their paper cranes, and when Yu looks surprised, another girl named Shuru pops out. Yu wonders what she's doing there, but she says she was just visiting. The girls wonder who she is, so Yu explains that she's a childhood friend that used to live there too. Assad bets her ruse the reason she dresses like a boy, but Unit tells her to cut it out. One of the kids shows his paper crane to the girls and says it's for his mom. Sora explains that they also take care of parents whose illnesses make it difficult to care for their kids. That's why they were making paper cranes on strings to send to them. The girls think it's a great idea, but Yu calls it a waste of time. Yu going to tells him he's wrong and tells the kids to ignore the buzzkill while they help them with their cranes. After a while, the girls present and a train wreck. Yes, Crane was doing way too much. Yuna was too slow with her. As an ad, he was too plums. The kids gather around and tell Lu the girls were a waste of twin planets and asks for his help. Instead, Yu couldn't resist their pleas and helped them make 1,000 paper cranes. The girls marveled at how good he was, while Yuru lamented wasting his precious time on screaming children. However, when he overheard a kid wondering if the crane would truly help his mom get better, it triggered a memory from his past. He grabbed the paper crane and handed it to the kid, assuring him that when the doctors see the charms, they'll do their best. So the boy cheered up instantly. Mahendra walked in and told the girls that Yu was so good at paper cranes because he folded thousands of them for his mother. Because of that, he's the one who understands the kids the most. The girls realize that Yu wants to be a doctor because of the kids, so Shira adds that Yu has always been there for them when they're anxious or sad. At that, Mahiro calls the girls' attention and tells them to take good care of Yu. Later on, the girls continue to play outside with the children while Mao congratulates Yu on bagging 3 shrine. Ladies, however, Yu laments that they wanted him to do all the chores, making it hard for him to study at all. Mahiri says Yu has always been able to do many things with his hands, but his mouth has had a hard time keeping up. However, she assures him that those 3 girls came all this way because they care about him and he be making a mistake. If he thought he wasn't welcome, she then reminds him of when he was a kid and wanted to help her with all the chores or taking care of the kids. Mahiro had told him that she was glad to do it all herself. Yu smiles and decides not to complain anymore, even if it means doing everything like she did, but Hiro approves and wishes him good luck. Later, the girls tease Hiro for having a crush on Mahu, but he tells them to shut their pie holes and explains that he owes her his life. He then apologizes for being selfish and leaving the house like that. He offers to do any housework they want him to, so Unit tells him that they'll become lazy at to do that, so they all offer to help out since they're family now. Yu gladly accepts, but the girls turn out to be housework. His room was back to square one in less than a day. Asa, he didn't understand the concept of using a line, and Yana could watch paint. Try faster than she could cook. Yu realized there was no hope for the trio of airheads. Just then Chidori popped in and said he was glad Yu was finally acting like a successor. However, Ryu still planned to do something about that marriage part later. Chidori then suggested that he should have a formal marriage interview with each of his granddaughter to deepen their bond. Some days later, Chidori comes to drag Yu for his first marriage interview. Yu figures the sisters are just as uninterested as he is, until he sees Adi playing her part all too well. Chidori announces the beginning of the interview, so Asa informs Yu that he'll have to spend the day with her. Chidori leaves to let the crazy kids have fun, so Asahi tells Zu they should enjoy the fun. While at last she then gets up close and starts to take off her robes, making Yu pretend to shield his eyes. Unfortunately, all he sees is a talking flatbeat that wants to go running. Moments later, Asahi and Yu go running together, and she explains that running is basically like breathing to her. Yu doesn't take her seriously since she's the most happy-go-lucky of the sisters, so Asahi threatens to leave him behind. Yu smugly says there was no way she could smoke him until the ends of half dead. 5 hours later, he heads inside hoping to take a shower, but finds the door wide open, revealing Asad's barren chest. Asahi then teases that she prefers getting open air, but Yu calls her sick. The next morning, Yu realizes he overslept and blames Asadi for tiring him out. However, Asad suddenly appears in his bed and tells him she'd like to continue their interview. Before she subjects him to an early morning marathon session, she wants to grab a new pair of running shoes. Yu calls her out on just using him, but Asad says she's got to tell her grandpa they did the interview. Yu sees the storage room has been hit with the same tornado that ran through Ya's room, but Asahi is too busy fantasizing about being locked alone with a boy to plot gods. Quickly pulled some strings and locked the door so they couldn't get out. Ad broke the news that since it's an old door, it wasn't going to budge. Huru tries to think of a solution when he notices Ahe begin to malfunction. Unlike her usual flirty self, he then remembers what she said in the bathroom and figures that she's scared of. Cramped spaces, Ahe tries to deny it, but when Yu sees her shaking, he places his hand on her head to calm her down. He then offers his back as protection, so Asahi clings tight to him while Yu tries to break through the window. Later that morning, Yu finally managed to make a hole big enough for him to fit through. Aside, he notices his bruised hands and is moved by how brave he is till he realizes how high the room is and starts stalling. Eventually, he drags himself down and opens the door for Ahi, who has the audacity to tease him for having a phobia. As they leave, Ad thanks him for his help, so Yu turns around and tells her that now that he thinks about it, she sometimes has a childless side. Asahi turns as red as her old report card and denies it, but suddenly Ya and Asahi run up to ask where she's been all morning. Asahi tells them she had an unforgettable night with Yu, triggering Yuna and her salt. The next day, Yuri prepares to face Yuna, but when he sees her fully in wifey mode, he suspects the world is ending. They take a walk together, and Yuna acts unusually gentle and sweet. Yu wonders who this is and what she did with Yuna till he notices her wave off a cat. Later, Yu asks Yuna why she's been acting strangely. Suddenly, Yuna pushes him down and tries to come onto him, but Yu pushes her back, insisting that he didn't want to make crack babies. Yuna finally returns to her bossy self and explains that she's only doing this for the sake of the shrine. She then leaves to pick flowers, while the other girls say that was downright hard to watch. Later, Hugh tries to ask the girls why Unit is doing way too much, and she really hates him. That's when the girls reveal that Unit is only trying to protect them from the grim fate of marrying Yu's ugly face. Apparently, she's always been like that, so Yu asks the girls what Yule likes. Later, Yu tells Yai to get changed so they can continue the rest of their interview. He then takes her to a cat cafe, and though she tries to deny being a closeted cat lady, she can't stop herself from making goo noises at it. She suddenly suggests they leave, but when Yu reminds her they just arrived, she says she can't afford to be lazy. Yu tells her that the girls are worried that she's been overworking herself for the shrine, but why? Insists that it's her mission. Yu can relate to her, but he reminds her that her sisters also matter, so she should treat her downtime as part of her mission. Yu offers to forget his studies and play with cats for the rest of the day. So Yul also lightens up and starts having fun with her kitty. Later, Yuna says she needs to take her sisters, or sometime Endu agrees that it's pretty addictive. Yuna then tosses a doll to them and thanks him for getting her out of her to relax. When Yid acts unusually sweet and calm, Yu asks if she has a brain parasite, making Yuna default to factory settings and toss salt at him the next day where he waits for his last interview with Yai. But when she takes her sweet time, he barges upstairs to ask why he accidentally walks in on her changing and nosebleeds his way out. However, when he asks what's taking so long, she assures him she'll be out in a second. A week passes and Yu returns prepared to barge in on her, but he finds that she's gone already. When he asks the girls, they have no idea where she went. And when Yuna starts to panic, Hiro tries to figure out where he could have gone. Later, Yu finds Wai drawing at the Inari shrine and asks her what she's doing. When Nei asks how he found her, he tells her the creepy fox drawing kind of tipped him off. He then insists on knowing the reason why she ditched the interview, so why he asks if he really has a crush on her. When he tells her to cut it out, she says it's a secret and assures him he'll probably find out soon enough. Ye suggests they do the interview at the shrine instead, so they go around taking pictures and acting like total tourists. Once the interview is over, Yuti hands him a charm to ward off evil as a token of her apology. As they walk off, H wonders if there's more to Yahi than being an airhead, but then she suddenly asks who he's chosen to marry. Ya lists Yuna and Asahi's good sides, but for her, she's got something a lot more soft and bouncy to offer. Yu gets flustered and accidentally steps off the staircase, causing him to fall backward. His life starts to flash before his eyes until he sees memories he doesn't recognize, hinting that he'll marry all three sisters. He then wakes up and sees it was all a dream. Later, he heads to Ya's room to find out what really happened after their interview, but the idiot is no help. Yuna shows up to nag Yu for bothering Yi. Then she sends him to go pick up some tea cakes for an important guest. While Wai at the store, he overhears some aunties talking about the upcoming Amagami festival, but they haven't been to the shrine in a long time. When Yu returns to the house, he finds the important guest, who advises them to put the shrine up for sale. Chori introduces the white-haired man as Mon, who is basically the shrine sugar daddy. Mon explains that since the shrine isn't pulling customers like before, they'll have to stop his financial support, but he offers to let them keep the house. When their mom was still alive, she was once able to gather 1,000 people to the festival, but since she kicked the bucket, they haven't even pulled 30% of that. Suddenly, the man's face wrinkles like Sukuna's finger as he mocks their mother for working herself to death. Yuna almost burst a blood vessel in anger, but her sisters manage to calm her down. Yu quickly interrupts the cruel man and tries to cut a deal in exchange for pulling 5,000 visitors to the festival. When the man warns him that his dreams are childish aside, he comes to his defense and says they're no longer kids. Ye politely asks the bitter old man to give them more time, so they all bawl to appease him. Mo and agrees to the deal, but he refuses to give them money for the festival and adds that if they fail to pull 5,000 people, they'll have to give up the house too. After hearing this, Hiro is surprised to hear the girls agree to the terms, with Chidori in full support. Before leaving, Monument shows them his severe pink eye condition and warns them not to regret their decision. Afterward, US scolds Yu for provoking the devil's younger brother, so the girls try and think of a plan to pull it off. When they notice Yuru is gone, they find him weeding through the previous festival registers and agree that they might be able to pull it off with this H. The next day, Huru looks like he's one eye bag away from becoming a zombie when he informs the girls of a drop-in stalls at the festival. The girls explain that since their mom died, they became arranged from the stall owners and Shidori was too busy taking care of them to keep up. However, the girls insist that they're old enough to run the festival by themselves. Now, here he suggests resorting to plan B, which is to use social media to get people's attention, so Unit assures him that they're masters of the internet. Their first poster turned out horrible, so Yu suggests using them as the campaign girls. Asai mocks him for thinking they're cute, but Yu is not ashamed to admit that he does Yuna objects to doing such a vulgar thing as a shrine maiden, so Asari volunteers to do the work since she's the cutest. The sister, unfortunately, she was only cute enough to garner one, which was probably sent by her mother's ghost. Since that didn't work, they tried a strained picture of Yuna, but only 2 people gave a frustrated Asadi turn to Yi's outrageous cup size to do the trick, but it got 0 likes and Yu now had. To bleach his eyes, Yuru points out that she's barely advertising the shrine or the festival, so Asahi plans to trilot photos in their maiden uniforms as Yuna shows up and calls her a failure as a shrine maiden for disrespecting God. Asahi fires back and insists that Yuna is the real failure for thinking God was the only important thing to consider. As the girls face off, Yag appears and warns them to behave so they don't get on her bad side, however, at the dinner. The girls don't say a word to each other, which bothers Yu. Later, Yu finds Yuna practicing her selfie poses when he asks if she's made up with Asahi. He then shows Yuna just how hard Asahi has been working and asks if she still thinks she's a failure at this Unitex style selfie of her to ask him for pointers. While Asahi responds to her excitedly, Yuna hugs her from behind and apologizes for being a sewer. The girls make up, so Yi runs in to join the mushy moment, and while the girls are messing around, Hugh takes a picture which ends up going viral after they continue to make TikTok content of. The shrine that did just as well. Because of this, Rue suggested they move on to phase 2, which was making limited items for sale. ET was put in charge of designing the talismans, but 2 days later, Yu almost ran mad from asking her for the designs the airhead had been procrastinating the whole time, but she assured him she'd get it to him the next morning. Year later realized they were in trouble because everything from Ya's mouth was a lie when he checked the room for her. She was already gone. Meanwhile, Ye was by the river watching some koi fish kid drama. When she saw the fish and love, it finally gave her inspiration for her own design. The next morning, Yu showed the girls his replacement talisman designs, but they told him to stick to studying medicine at all costs. Just then, he wandered in with the new design, which everyone immediately praised for her genius. He explained the design of love was so they could reel in the young and desperately single Yu scolds for being lenient with her pace and promises to keep an eye on her next time, but the girls call him creepy for wanting to stalk an older woman. However, Ye feels grateful that he'd go that far for her now with her social media success and the new talisman designs. The girls are excited for the festival, but Yuru tells them they have one more important thing to do. Later, they head toward the town shopping district, and the girls limit how nervous they are. They eventually meet with the stall lures from before, and Yu asks for their help to make the festival a success. After explaining that the shrine was in financial trouble, Yuru and the girls bowed to ask for their help. To their surprise, the stall owners were more than happy to help. The girls hoped they were not imposing, but they explained that they had already been discussing the festival anyway. The stall owners admit that ever since the previous owner died, they had been reluctant to go there, but they never thought the shrine would be struggling. Their families have been helped by the M.A.F for generations, so they were glad to help them protect the Yu, and the girls thanked them for their help. Then the stall owners suggested they hold a strategy meeting immediately later. As the girls watched Yu with the stall owners, they were reminded of their mother. They admit that they've learned so much thanks to Yu, and believe they can finally make the festival a success. Comment shrine maidens are enough for me if you want the next part, and if you like anime recaps like this, then watch this video right here.